G'day guys, we're creating a bit of a technical how-to guide today. We're going to put together the matrix. Now bear in mind this may not be 100% like the one that you've ordered because there's a whole stack of different matrix options that you can go with, from single cells to multiple cell with different bridges and different attachments. Needless to say, we're going to run through the basics on how to put a single cell matrix together, just to give you an idea on how it all fits together, and then if you've just got bigger matrices and different attachments, you just re-replicate what we're going through today. So I'm standing with all the components of your standard single cell matrix here. We've got our main uprights in the centre and we've got our cross beams on the side. Over here we have our bridge attachments, so they're our extension beams, so if you're going to be utilising the extensions to extend those matrix cells out, then you would use those. Now I've got a 90mm and 110mm bolt. Now you've got to be specific on which ones you use at different stages. Naturally we'll go over that. Now the base unit stays the same, that single cell stays the same, and if you're going to extend this out, then all you do is replicate as you go through. So the first thing you want to do is lay out your components in the order that you're going to put them together. Now the best way to do that is to set up your uprights, just like so, and then put in your cross beams. So it's basically we're setting up either side of the matrix first. Now if you're just putting together a single cell, then you're just going to utilise the 90mm bolt. So there's nothing complicated here, just set it up all finger tight at this stage. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to run through a matrix cell that's going to extend out and utilise bridges. So what we want to do is use our extension pieces, and we just want to line them up on the outside, on either outside of the uprights, just like so. Now this is where you want to use your 110mm bolts, because the 90s just won't, they won't be long enough to go through. Naturally at this stage there's a bit of a trick that we need to just run through with you as well, so just do them up finger tight at this stage. Okay, so we've just put our bolts through on our cross beams and our uprights. We've done them all up finger tight, and I just want to mention at this stage that we've got 7 holes here. So you're probably wondering why we've got so many holes. Now this just allows you to set up our chinning bars at different heights, and also when we come to put our triangle bars on as well, if that's what you've also purchased, it just gives you some different options there as well. At this stage we're ready to do up our bolts, but there's one thing we need to do before we can tighten those up completely. Now bear in mind that when we lay these cross beams down, they do have a base plate at the bottom. So what that's going to do is it's going to cause the whole cross beam to sit at an angle. Now that may not seem like much, but when we come to do up our cross beams, they're going to sit at an odd angle, and it's going to be even worse when we come to put our extensions on, because all this is going to run at an angle and you end up with a crooked attachment if you tighten them up. Now what you want to do is you want to grab a weight plate at this stage, and you just want to chock this up because you want to make sure that the uprights are all nice and level. So it's as simple as this. All we do is we pick our matrix up and we slot in a 10 kilo, it doesn't really matter, just a weight plate just to chock it up. So good thing to do is to put a weight plate on this side and a weight plate on this side, so then it's all nice and even. Then you can proceed with tightening those bolts up. Now what you want to do, just one thing to mention, is with your cross beams where they line up with your main uprights, just look at the top and just make sure it's nice and level. That way everything will sit nice and evenly. So what we do is we just quickly adjust this, make sure it's all nice and level, and now I'm ready to crank this up. So I'm using a good old drill here, which is going to make things nice and quick. As you go, just making sure that's all nice and level, and we're all good to go and do all the other ones. Now that you've got all your bolts nice and tight, and you've also made sure that all the uprights are lined up with your cross beams, and if you've got those extension attachments, making sure that they're all nice and flush as well. Now at this point, as much as I'd like to believe that I can do anything by myself, I actually need someone to help me out. So I'm going to bring Jared in here. Now what we want to do is we want to attach our chin-up attachments here. So what we want to do is we want to grab a bolt, drop it in the top end hole. Then 2 over, we want to drop one in there as well. So once they're setting in there, you just drop them in. I'm going to get Jared to lift this up, and I'm going to grab the good old chin-up attachment, the chin-up crossbeam, and then I'm just going to line up those holes, just like so, and then I'm going to grab the other one as well. So lining that up on this other side. Once they're sitting in there, I'm ready to tighten those up and get to the other side. Now, whereas before we needed 2 people, now we need that extra person. So we actually need 3 people in this next step. So what we're going to do is we're going to stand the matrix up and then bring the other bit together. So I'm going to bring in my 2 guys to help me out here. And what we're going to do is we're going to push this up and we're going to get Jared there to hold the matrix up. And because it's standing upright, there's no issues about him holding that by himself. Now, me and Josh are going to position this other piece. We're going to turn this around and we're going to line this up with our chin-up cross beams. Just like so. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this while Josh puts in the bolts at the top. Just get those bolts in finger tight, just to stop this thing from falling over, and then the unit itself will actually support itself. Then you can go around and fully tighten up the bolts. With all the bolts together at the top, you have a completed matrix cell. Now, if you're just going with the matrix cell by itself, you're pretty much ready to start dynabolting this thing to the ground. Remember, you don't really want this freestanding because you want this solid to the ground, because when you start doing chin-ups with kips and so forth, you don't want to pull this thing over. Now, if you're extending on via the bridge extensions at the top, you want to build the complete structure first before you start to think about dynabolting to the ground. The last thing you want is dynabolting at this end, and then you're trying to line everything up, and then you're just going to end up having to cut those dynabolts out of the ground. So naturally, build the whole structure, then dynabolt to the ground once you've done that. Now, before you dynabolt the matrix cell to the ground, you want to make sure that all of these uprights are nice and level, and you've got the right distance at the bottom between the uprights as you do up at the top. Otherwise, the thing just won't line up and it'll be all out of skew. Now, the 2 best friends that you can have when doing this is your tape measure and your spirit level. Naturally, you just want to use your spirit level. Make sure, of course, it's the right way up. And you just want to make sure that those uprights are dead straight. You don't want them off to an angle because, yeah, you don't want this thing being lopsided. So making sure that all of our uprights are nice and level, then that is good. Then the next step is you want to make sure that the distance, which is 1080 millimetres, is the same at the bottom. So you want to use your tape measure to make sure that all of those legs are the same distance. So you're just going around, then you're ready to actually dynabolt this thing to the ground. Now, dynabolting is a relatively straightforward process, but I do suggest, if you haven't done this before, do seek help from a qualified tradesperson. Now, what we need is a hammer drill, we need a hammer, and we need a drill with a socket attachment or a ratchet or a spanner to complete this process. Now, what you do is you grab your 10mm dynabolts, which are supplied with the matrix, and you need a 10mm masonry drill bit to drill through the concrete or the floor. Now, what I do suggest at this point, from a safety point of view, that you do use some safety eyewear and also some earplugs, because when we drill through concrete it can be quite noisy and you don't want to damage your ears. Once we've drilled our hole, we're ready to put our dynabolt in. But bear in mind, when we drill our hole, we want to leave probably around about 20 to 30 mil deeper than the actual dynabolt itself, because when we drill, the dust settles down the bottom. The last thing you want to do is you go to bash in the dynabolt and you end up, it doesn't go in all the way, and then it's going to be virtually impossible to pull the damn thing out. So just remember, give yourself 20 to 30 mil at the bottom for the actual hole depth. Now what we do is we just poke the dynabolt into the hole, and then this is where we use our hammer and we just tap it into place. Just like so. And then what I do is I grab my drill and then I tighten her up. Tighten her up all the way. Naturally the ratchet gun works really, really well. And there, she's all sorted. Once you've got all your dynabolts in, you've got your completed matrix cell all ready to go. Whether it be for your chin-ups, your kipping chin-ups, loaded squats, whatever the task is, this thing can handle it. Now, if you've got any questions about the build or the construction at any stage, don't be shy to get in contact with us. For more information about the Matrix, don't forget to check out ironedge.com.